blind black teenage girl walked slowly into a boutique store, her white cane tapping softly against the polished floor. The space was quiet, filled with soft music and expensive perfume. Heads turned, not in kindness, but suspicion. Behind the counter, a white store clerk narrowed her eyes, watching the girl's every move. She leaned toward a coworker and whispered something sharp. Within minutes, she was across the floor, her voice loud enough to turn heads. The girl hadn't touched a single item. She hadn't said a single word. But she was accused of snooping, of pretending, of making other customers uncomfortable. Security was called. They didn't ask questions. They didn't see her walking stick. They didn't ask why her hands were shaking. She was escorted out like a thief. No one in. That store knew the truth. No one knew who she was. And no one saw the woman approaching from the parking lot, the owner of the boutique, who was just steps away from seeing her daughter humiliated in public. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. Layla had been learning to walk without help for 3 years. It started with the short hallway outside her bedroom. Then it was the front porch, then the sidewalk. Every step, every tap of the cane was a promise to herself. She would not live small just because the world couldn't see her strength. At 16, she was finally confident enough to try the mall on her own. Her mother, Denise, had always told her, "Move like you belong even when they act like you don't." Denise knew something about that. She had grown her business from nothing, opening her first boutique in a borrowed storefront, slowly expanding across Atlanta. She never put her face on billboards or company cards. She believed in letting her work speak for itself. Even her employees, scattered across 5 stores, didn't all know what she looked like. Layla didn't want special treatment. She didn't even want help. That morning, she planned a surprise. Her mother's birthday was in 2 weeks. She'd found the exact necklace Denise had once admired, delicate, amber-stoned, held in a glass case at one of her own stores. Layla had memorized the bus route, practiced the layout of the mall, and mapped each step in her mind. She carried her mother's words like armor. When she entered the boutique, her presence was quiet, but firm. She paused at the threshold, letting the sounds guide her. The faint ring of the door, the soft music overhead, the hush of shuffling feet. She turned her head slightly, listening for movement, and then tapped forward with slow grace. Behind the counter, a white woman in her early 30s watched her with narrowed suspicion. Her arms crossed, posture stiff. A second employee whispered something and both laughed just under their breath. Layla moved carefully through the first display table. She didn't knock anything over. Her fingers gently skimmed the edge of a silk scarf, then the corner of a jewelry tray. She was focused, calm. Still, the clerk saw something different. She saw what she wanted to see. A young black girl wandering alone, moving too carefully, lingering too long. The clerk's gaze darkened. Other customers were in the store. A mother browsing with her teenage daughter, an older couple near the back. They glanced up, then looked away. None of them spoke. Layla felt the tension before she heard the footsteps. Someone was coming toward her fast. She didn't flinch, she never did. But her hand gripped the cane tighter. The clerk stopped just inches away and hovered. The silence was thick, as if the room itself was waiting to see what would happen next. This was supposed to be a small act of independence, a quiet trip, a gift for someone she loved. Layla had done nothing wrong, but inside that store, none of that mattered. Her calm, her cane, her quiet presence, they were not seen as strength. They were seen as threat. The clerk did not ask if Layla needed help. She didn't ask if she was looking for something. She didn't ask anything at all. Instead, she reached out and grabbed Layla's wrist, sharp and sudden, as if swatting at a child caught misbehaving. "Young lady," the clerk said, loud enough for others to hear. "You can't just walk around touching things. I saw you feeling the cases. If you're not buying anything, you need to leave." Layla's voice trembled, not with fear, but with restraint. She stood still, her fingers gently curled around her walking stick. She tried to speak, but the clerk cut her off. "Don't play games," the woman snapped. "I've seen this kind of act before. You pretend you can't see, but you've got no dog, no badge, no one with you. People fake all kinds of things to distract and steal." The words struck like ice. Customers paused. Some lowered their heads. Others pretended to keep shopping. One lifted their phone, not obviously, but tilted, quietly recording. Still, no one stepped in. Layla said softly, "I'm not pretending." But it didn't matter. The clerk had already decided. Within minutes, she was on the phone with mall security. Her voice grew theatrical, inflated with imagined danger. She described Layla as unaccompanied, possibly disturbed, wandering and refusing to leave. Every word was wrapped in code, language used to sound reasonable while meaning something else entirely. When the security guards arrived, two men in dark uniforms, they didn't look confused or curious. They looked bored, like they had seen this story before and already knew the ending. "She says she's blind," the clerk told them, arms folded. "But I think she's just casing the place." One of the guards looked Layla up and down. He sighed. "Ma'am, you're going to have to step outside while we sort this out. Layla tried to explain. "We don't need a story," the second guard said. "Let's go." They didn't offer an arm. They didn't ask if she needed help. They didn't see her at all. As she stepped forward, one of the guards reached for her cane, as if it were suspicious. He turned it over in his hand. "Looks legit," he muttered, as if surprised. By now, a small crowd had gathered just beyond the boutique entrance. A few people filming, most just staring. Layla was led past them in silence out into the open corridor of the mall. The guard told her to sit until her guardian showed up. She lowered herself slowly to the floor, back straight, head held high, but her hands trembled. One of the shoppers from earlier walked by. Her daughter tugged at her sleeve, whispering, "Is she okay?" The mother whispered back, "Don't get involved, sweetie." Inside the store, the clerk dusted her hands off like the situation was settled. The other employee, a younger girl, looked down at the register, lips pressed tight, saying nothing. Layla sat still, surrounded by people but completely alone. Gain returned to her hands felt heavier now, not because it had changed, but because of how easily someone tried to take it, how quickly people believed a lie about her, even when the truth was visible in every careful step she took. She had imagined this day so differently. She had seen herself standing at the counter, asking for the necklace wrapped in the silver box. She had imagined her mother's surprised smile, the warm hug, the proud words, "You came here all by yourself?" But instead she was sitting on cold tile under fluorescent lights, her body rigid with silent humiliation. A few feet away, a teenage boy recorded her on his phone, whispering, "She didn't even do nothing." His friend told him to put the phone away. No one came closer. No one sat beside her. She wasn't crying. She didn't scream. That made it worse somehow, because even in her silence, she made the whole mall feel uncomfortable. The injustice wasn't that it was quiet, methodical, practiced. She wasn't pushed, she was escorted. She wasn't insulted, she was checked on. She wasn't accused, she was suspected. But the effect was the same, stripped of dignity, treated like a danger, and removed from a space she had every right to be in. She waited there, still and patient, because that's what she had been taught, and because her mother was on her way. The store clerk stepped outside just long enough to look down at Layla one last time. She didn't crouch, didn't speak softly. Her voice carried a smile that wasn't real. "You should probably try somewhere else," she said, brushing invisible lint from her sleeve. "This store isn't really your type." Then she turned and walked back in, her heels clicking, like punctuation marks on polished tile. Layla sat still, her hands folded in her lap. The white cane rested beside her, now more symbol than tool. People walked by. Some looked. Some didn't. A few slowed, their eyes darting from her face to the store sign behind her. But no one stopped. 10 minutes passed. then 12. Time moved strangely when humiliation settled into the bones. A little girl with braided pigtails walked past, holding her mother's hand. She tugged gently and whispered, "Why is that lady on the floor?" Her mother glanced down. Their eyes met for the briefest second before she looked away. "Come on," she said, leading her child forward. "We're late." Layla heard them go. She had never felt more visible and more invisible at the same time. Then, in the distance, footsteps, firm, fast, familiar. A woman's voice called her. Name. Not loud, but clear, sure. The kind of voice that didn't ask. It knew. Layla turned her head slightly. "Mom?" Denise was at her side in seconds, kneeling without hesitation, without concern for the floor or the stairs. Her hand went to Layla's shoulder. The moment her fingers touched skin, she knew. She knew something terrible had happened. Layla's face was calm, but her silence screamed. "What happened?" Denise asked quietly. Layla didn't answer right away. Her throat worked hard against the lump forming. She wanted to say nothing. She wanted to pretend the moment could be forgotten. But her mother waited, not pressing, not prying, just waiting. So Layla began to speak. Her voice cracked in places. Her fingers never stopped moving, curling and uncurling around the cane. She told her mother about the clerk, the accusation, the security guards who didn't ask, didn't see, didn't care. Denise did not interrupt. Her expression didn't change, but her breathing slowed. She looked toward the boutique. The glass door was half open. Inside, shoppers moved through displays, unaware, or pretending to be. The clerk stood behind the register again, laughing softly with the other employee as if nothing had happened. Layla finished her story. "I just wanted to get you something for your birthday." Denise took a breath that seemed to echo through the hallway. Then she stood. No dramatic gesture, no raised voice, just a slow rise. Layla sat still, her hands in her lap. Her mother walked toward the boutique, the same store she had designed, staffed, and poured years of her life into. She crossed the threshold without a word. Inside, the clerk looked up. She smiled in greeting, not yet recognizing the woman she had just humiliated by extension. "Welcome in," she said. And Denise looked back at her like a quiet storm about to make landfall. Denise did not return the greeting. She walked calmly to the center of the store, past the jewelry case, past the scarf rack her daughter had touched just minutes earlier. Her heels were soft on the tile, but the silence she carried was heavier than any sound. The clerk's smile faltered. "Can I help you find something?" she asked, a little slower now. Denise turned toward her. "I need to see the employee file." The words landed flat, but their weight shifted the air. The clerk blinked. "I'm sorry." Denise took one step closer. "I'm the owner of this store." It wasn't loud, but every head turned. The young woman behind the counter froze, her voice catching halfway to a question. The assistant manager, who had just returned from the back room, dropped her eyes and stepped aside. Denise did not elaborate. She didn't need to. The clerk's mouth opened slightly, then closed. Her posture changed just barely, but enough. The certainty in her face evaporated like breath on cold glass. I didn't know," she whispered. Denise looked her. The eyes, voice even. "You didn't need to." The clerk started to speak, to explain, but Denise raised one hand. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to document what happened. I want a written incident report from you and a copy sent to corporate HR. Right now." From a corner of the store, a woman stepped forward cautiously. She held a phone in her hand, video still rolling. "I recorded what happened out there," she said gently. "If it helps." Denise turned her head. "Thank you." Another woman, older, clutching a shopping bag, nodded slowly. "I didn't say anything earlier. I should have. I'm sorry." The clerk, now pale, reached for a clipboard. Denise didn't watch her write. She looked around the store. The scarves, the quiet music, the curated light. She had built this space for beauty, for elegance, for dignity, and her daughter had been stripped of all three within its walls. Behind her, the assistant manager quietly, took off her name tag and set it on the counter. "I can't keep working here," she said under her breath. "Not if this is how we treat people." Denise gave her a nod. Nothing more. Then she stepped back out into the mall corridor. Layla hadn't moved. She sat exactly as Denise had left her, upright, composed, silent. "I've taken care of it," her mother said. Layla gave a small, tired smile. "I didn't want to ruin your store." "You didn't," Denise replied. "You reminded me why I built it." They didn't embrace, not yet. But something passed between them, something stronger than arms. A truth made visible. The story wasn't over, but the silence was. Have you ever been treated unfairly because of something people assumed about you? Share your story in the comments. We're listening. By nightfall, the video had made its way across the internet. A teenage girl sitting on the floor outside a boutique. A white cane at her side, her posture still, her hands folded. And a woman, her mother, walking into the store with a silence that carried history. The clip was only 38 seconds long, but it traveled fast. No voiceover, no music. Just a quiet story unfolding in front of a watching world. In less than 24 hours, Denise received hundreds of messages. Some were from parents of children with disabilities, some from strangers who had once been profiled in stores, airports, classrooms. Others simply said, "Thank you for not yelling. Thank you for showing us how to hold power without raising your voice." That morning, Denise called an emergency meeting with her executive staff. "No press release, no delay. This isn't a one-store problem," she said. "This is a system problem. And it happened under my roof." She didn't ask for ideas. She brought a list. First, every employee across her 5 boutiques would undergo new training, designed not by consultants, but by people who lived with the realities of bias and disability every day. Second, her company would fund tactile maps and braille menus for every location, starting with the store where Layla had been humiliated. Third, every security company under contract with her stores would be required to attend an equity-based protocol workshop or be replaced. And finally, Layla would never be used as a poster child or a campaign. She already did her part, Denise said. She stayed calm when no one else did. Inside the boutique, the fallout began. The clerk who had thrown Layla out was suspended pending investigation. She wrote a statement filled with apologies, explanations, and regret. But nowhere did she mention why she acted the way she did before knowing who Layla was. The assistant manager, who had quit on the spot, received a letter from Denise thanking her for her courage. A week later, she was offered a new position on the training development team. As the news spread, customers began showing up, not to protest, but to observe, to see if this story was different, and it was. One afternoon, a woman who had been there during the incident returned to the store. She asked to speak to someone in charge. Her voice was low, her expression uneasy. I watched her get escorted out. "I didn't say a word," she said. "I just wanted to tell someone that I wish I had." The new store lead didn't offer her a discount or a survey card. She simply said, "Thank you for coming back." In the weeks that followed, Denise received requests for interviews, invitations to speak at forums, awards she hadn't asked for. She turned most of them down. She didn't want a spotlight. She wanted accountability. She only spoke once, at a closed meeting of small business owners across the city, and even there she kept it short. "You don't need to wait until someone turns out to be your daughter," she said. "You don't need to know someone's story to treat them like they belong." That line made its way to headlines, but Denise didn't notice. She was busy reviewing final designs for the new store signage, set to be installed by the end of the month, and at home, Layla was doing her own work, quietly, patiently. She didn't want revenge. She didn't want a microphone. She just wanted to go out again without people staring at her like she was a problem to solve. She wasn't afraid. She was ready. 1 month later, Layla stood again in front of the same boutique, the same door, the same music drifting faintly through the glass, but nothing about the space felt the same. Her white cane moved with quiet certainty, sweeping left, then forward, She paused at the threshold. The scent of jasmine and sandalwood met her like a welcome. Her hand rested lightly on the door handle, not hesitating, just listening. Then she stepped inside. The new manager greeted her, not with fake cheer, not with cautious distance, but with sincere respect. "Welcome in, Miss Layla," she said. There were new touches around the store, not flashy, subtle. Braille placards beside each display, raised path indicators on the floor, even a textured guide mat from the entrance to the counter. These weren't pity features. They weren't installed to prove a point. They were built with care for people who had always been expected to adapt. Now, the store had adapted for them. Layla walked slowly to the jewelry case. She already knew what she wanted. The necklace, amber-stoned, delicate chain. Her fingers traced the edge of the case as the clerk retrieved it for her. This time she wasn't stopped. She wasn't followed. She wasn't doubted. She was seen. Outside the store, a few curious passers-by lingered. Some recognized her, some didn't. One woman, older, dressed in beige, approached after a moment. "I was here that day," she said softly. "I didn't say anything, but I watched what they did to you. I've thought about it every day since." Layla turned toward the voice, nodding gently. "Thank you," she said, nothing more. There was no need for confrontation. The apology was enough. Word had spread that Denise's stores were doing things differently. Other businesses in the mall began taking notice. A nearby cafe added Braille menus. A clothing store installed wider aisles after a customer in a wheelchair emailed a quiet thank you note to Denise for leading without shouting. The impact rippled quietly. A local high school invited Layla to speak at a student forum on ableism and race. She said no at first, but after talking with her mom, she changed her mind. When the day came, she stood at the front of the auditorium, not with a slideshow or prepared speech, but with a single sentence. "You don't have to be loud to be right." Then, she shared what happened, slowly. Fact by fact. She didn't cry, she didn't ask for sympathy. She told the story so others could understand what it feels like to be erased, and what it means to remain. Afterward, a teacher approached with tears in her eyes and said, "I've been training my staff wrong. Thank you." Layla just nodded. Back at home, Denise finished her final review of the new policy manuals. Printed, bound, distributed to every store. Titled simply, "Dignity First." Her work wasn't over, but the foundation had changed. The culture was shifting. The quiet spaces between moments, the ones where assumptions had once lived, were now filled with intention. In the back of the boutique, behind the counter where it had all begun, hung a small framed photograph. Layla, standing in front of the door, her cane in hand, her chin lifted ever so slightly, no plaque, no caption, just presence. Months passed, the seasons shifted, but one thing remained at the front of every boutique Denise owned. A small bronze plaque, placed waist-high so anyone, standing or seated, could read it easily. "This space honors every customer's dignity, seen or unseen." It did not mention race. It did not mention disability. It didn't need to. The people who had lived the story already understood, and those who hadn't were reminded, softly, steadily, that respect begins with what we choose not to assume. Layla never asked you to be remembered. She didn't want her story printed in papers or praised in meetings. She wanted to walk freely, shop quietly, live fully. And now she could. Denise didn't bring up that day unless someone else did. Not because she wanted to forget it, but because she had already turned it into something else. Not a scandal, not a campaign, a standard. The store that once humiliated. Her daughter became the place that taught the city something sacred. That real strength doesn't always raise its voice, and real change doesn't always arrive in a roar. Sometimes it enters softly, step by step, cane to tile, dignity held like light in open hands. If this story moved you, share it with someone who believes in quiet strength. Let's build a world where dignity never has to be earned.